I bought a house for $100. I wasn't being clever. I was broke, desperate, and out of options. My name is Rachel Mercer. I'm 34 years old, and 2 years ago my life looked nothing like I imagined it would. For 6 years I poured everything into an interior design company I built with my college roommate Dana Whitfield. We started with folding tables, borrowed laptops, and more optimism than experience. Eventually we landed real clients, then bigger clients. The business became our entire lives. At least that's what I thought. What I didn't know was that Dana had been planning her exit for months. By the time I figured it out, it was already done. She dissolved the company, took the client list, walked away with the vendor relationships we'd spent years building, and left me trapped behind a non-compete agreement her attorney had quietly prepared beforehand. I couldn't afford a legal fight, so I lost everything. Within months, I was sleeping on a second-hand mattress in a tiny studio apartment outside Columbus, eating whatever was cheapest and trying not to think about how fast a life could fall apart. One night, sometime after 2 in the morning, I stumbled across a video about tax lien auctions. Most people never pay attention to them. Cities auction abandoned properties when owners stop paying taxes. Sometimes there are opportunities. Most of the time there aren't. But one listing caught my attention. 414 Denoise Street, a neglected craftsman bungalow in a small town called Millhaven. 3 bedrooms, built in 1931, abandoned for years. Minimum bid $100. On auction day, nobody else showed up. I bought the house for exactly $100. When I first saw it in person, I almost laughed. The porch railing was collapsing. The windows were boarded shut. Weeds reached nearly to my waist. The place looked like it had lost a fight with time itself. But beneath all that neglect, I saw something different. Potential. The roofline was straight. The foundation looked solid. The structure still had pride. And honestly, so did I. Maybe not much, but enough. The plan was simple. Fix it, live in it while I worked, sell it when it was finished. The first few weeks were exactly what you'd expect. Dust, splinters, demolition, long days and sore muscles. I ripped out damaged flooring, removed old cabinets, scraped decades of paint. Little by little, the house began revealing pieces of itself. Original woodwork, handcrafted trim, beautiful details hidden beneath years of neglect. Then, during my 3rd week there, something strange happened. I was working in the dining room when I tapped on one of the interior walls. The sound felt wrong. Part of the wall sounded hollow. Part of it sounded solid. And right in the middle was a section that sounded completely different. Dense, deliberate, almost as if something had been built behind it. I convinced myself it was insulation. Old houses are full of surprises, but the feeling wouldn't leave me. 3 days later, I returned with a stud finder. The readings didn't make sense. They formed a pattern that looked suspiciously like a hidden doorway. For several minutes, I just stood there staring at the wall. Every instinct told me to walk away. Instead, I grabbed a pry bar. A few minutes later, the wall opened. And behind it was a hidden room. Small, windowless, perfectly concealed. The air smelled like cedar and old metal. A single light bulb hung from the ceiling, and stacked neatly against the far wall were 12 black duffel bags. I slowly unzipped the nearest one. Then another. Then another. Every bag was packed with cash. More money than I'd ever seen in my entire life. But that wasn't the part that scared me, because sitting on a small wooden shelf nearby was a sealed envelope, and inside was a single handwritten word: run. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? A hidden room, 12 duffel bags filled with cash, and a handwritten note containing only one word: run. I sat at my kitchen table until sunrise, replaying everything over and over. The money was terrifying enough, but the note bothered me more. Someone had hidden millions of dollars inside a secret room and left a warning for whoever found it. That meant somebody knew the money existed, and if somebody knew it existed, they might eventually come looking for it. The next morning, I drove to the Millhaven Public Library. Not a lawyer, not the police. The library. I needed answers before I made any decisions. After several hours digging through archives, one name kept appearing: Gerald Foss, the former owner of the house, the man who had died years earlier. The more I searched, the stranger things became. There were almost no records about him. No family. No close friends. No obvious history. Just scattered references tied to shell companies and obscure property transactions. It felt less like researching a person and more like chasing a ghost. That afternoon, I returned to the house and finally counted the money. Every stack, every bundle, every bag. When I finished, the total came to just over $3 million. I stared at the number until it stopped feeling real. Then I did the only sensible thing I could think of. I hired a lawyer. Patricia Okafor listened carefully while I explained everything. The hidden room, the money, the note, the history of the property. When I finished, she folded her hands and asked a question I wasn't expecting. "Rachel, do you feel safe?" The question sent a chill through me. "I think so." Her expression didn't change. "Think carefully." For the first time I wasn't sure. Patricia immediately advised me to create a formal record of the discovery. If trouble came later, documentation could save me. So that same day, I reported everything to the county sheriff. Within hours, deputies were photographing the hidden room and cataloging evidence. That's when Sheriff Dale Pruitt said something that made my stomach drop. "We received an anonymous tip about this house years ago." I looked up. "What kind of tip?" "Someone claimed a large amount of cash was hidden here." The room suddenly felt colder. Someone knew. Someone had known for years. And whoever they were had never forgotten. I was still trying to process that information when my phone buzzed during the drive home. Unknown number. One text, 5 words. "We know you found it." My hands tightened around the steering wheel. Then came another message. "Don't do anything stupid." The fear I'd been holding back finally arrived. Not panic. Something worse. The feeling that invisible eyes were suddenly watching every move I made. Patricia wasn't surprised. "If they're contacting you now," she said, "they've probably been waiting for this house to change hands." Over the next few days, her investigation uncovered another name. Raymond Crane, a successful commercial developer, well-connected, financially powerful, and somehow connected to Gerald Foss. The connection became clearer with every document Patricia uncovered. Business records, shell companies, old partnerships, disappearing corporations. The deeper we dug, the uglier the picture became. Then one afternoon, my phone rang. Unknown number again. This time I answered. The voice on the other end sounded calm. Too calm. "Ms. Mercer, my name is Raymond Crane." Every muscle in my body tightened. "I believe we need to discuss the money." His tone remained polite, professional, almost friendly, which somehow made it worse. He claimed his family had a rightful interest in the hidden fortune. He spoke as if everything could be solved with a simple conversation, but something about him felt rehearsed, dangerous, like a man smiling while calculating exactly how much pressure he needed to apply. "Call my attorney," I said. Then I hung up. The next escalation came 3 days later. I returned to the house after spending the night elsewhere. The back door was standing open. My pulse immediately spiked. I rushed inside. Nothing had been stolen. Not my tools. Not my equipment. Not my laptop. But somebody had gone through my files. My notes were scattered. Drawers were open. Papers had been moved. Whoever entered wasn't looking for valuables. They were looking for information. And suddenly I understood. There was something else hidden in that house. Something Raymond Crane desperately needed to find before I did. If you've ever felt like you're standing in the middle of a mystery that's getting darker by the day, subscribe, because some secrets refuse to stay buried. For the next week, I searched every inch of that house. The attic, the basement, behind vents, inside wall cavities, under floorboards. And eventually, hidden inside an old record sleeve tucked deep in the attic, I found exactly what someone had been searching for. A document, several pages long, signed decades earlier. The moment I started reading, I realized everything was about to change. Because the papers didn't just explain where the money came from. They explained why Raymond Crane was so desperate to get it back. The document hidden in the attic changed everything. For years, Raymond Crane had acted like the rightful owner of the money. But the agreement told a different story. It revealed that his father and Gerald Foss had operated a secret cash laundering enterprise through a network of shell companies. More importantly, it contained a clause Raymond never expected anyone to find. When one partner died, Ownership transferred entirely to the surviving partner. When Raymond's father died, his share legally passed to Gerald Foss, and when Foss later died without heirs, everything connected to the property remained with the house. Raymond had spent years waiting for an opportunity that never belonged to him. Once prosecutors obtained the agreement, the entire case shifted. The investigation uncovered old financial records, witness testimony, and evidence connecting Raymond to the operation years earlier. His attorney withdrew. His business partners started distancing themselves. The carefully polished image he'd spent decades building began falling apart piece by piece. Months later, Raymond accepted a plea agreement. He avoided prison, but his reputation didn't survive. Major projects collapsed. Investors walked away. His development company eventually dissolved. The irony wasn't lost on me. The man who spent years chasing hidden money lost everything because he couldn't stop chasing it. As for the money itself, the courts eventually reached a decision. A portion connected directly to criminal activity was forfeited. The remainder, more than $2 million, was awarded to me as the lawful purchaser of the property. When Patricia called with the news, I honestly didn't know what to say. I just sat there staring at the wall and laughing, not because of the money, because for the first time in years my future belonged to me again. If you've ever had someone try to intimidate you into giving up what you've rightfully earned, subscribe, because some victories are worth waiting for. I never sold the house. Instead, I rebuilt it. Then I rebuilt my life. And every evening when I sit on that front porch watching the sunset, I'm reminded of something important. Fear can warn you, but it should never be allowed to decide your future.